Hello, I'm back to have yet another conversation about the Karen Read trial. And if you're looking for real-time courtroom updates, I'm not your gal. You got to go follow Nurse Kim or Jay Megan or Gooj or Dave Cullinane. Sorry, Dave, I can't pronounce it. Anyway, they are all the people who are watching this trial every day, and they do 5 or 6 videos a day to tell you exactly what's going on the stand. I'm the broad that comes along 3 days later and goes, hey, did you hear? This shit's getting wild. And it's a real wonder that any of you are still listening to me because I'm so fucking far behind. Well, good news. This time I actually have some information that's a little bit more current, that stuff that happened this week that I think you'll enjoy. And I actually made notes because I don't want anything to get left out. So the first thing is we had a juror that got dismissed from the case. The person wanted to leave due to personal reasons. We have no reason not to believe that. Vinnie Politan had said on his show, and I do not know if he knows this for a fact, he heard this somewhere, but he was saying that the juror told other jurors that they don't like the fact that Karen is smiling in court. Do not know if that's true or not, but Karen has been smiling a lot lately. Maybe it has something to do with the sweet smell of freedom floating around the courtroom, because this prosecution has not done its job. And there's a very real chance, and she's probably feeling it, that this is going to end in her favor. But on the off chance that her behavior has offended jurors, I'm sure her defense team will tell her, poker face, shut it down. Speaking of the defense attorney, so David Yannetti spoke with reporters, and he said something really interesting, where he had said he was kind of shocked when Proctor was on the stand because he felt that Proctor had perjured himself, meaning he made up a conversation out of whole cloth, is what Yannetti said. What he's referring to is David Yannetti himself, on the off day, went to go visit Lucky, the plow driver. Now, Lucky is going to be a defense witness. So he went to speak with his witness. And from what I understand, very innocently wanted to go meet with the witness, bring along a PI, and they were planning to drive Lucky's route with him. I think it's an entirely different thing to sit in the plow and drive around and see what you can see, the angle, the level, like everything that you can see in the route he took. To be honest with you, this should have been something the investigators did, but they didn't. In fact, they didn't even talk to Lucky for 19 months. Lucky, the snowplow driver, was not questioned by police until August of 2023. That is 19 months after John O'Keefe died. So Yannetti goes to meet with his witness, and Lucky says, let's just meet in this parking lot. We'll meet here. We'll jump in my truck. We'll drive around. It all sounds very innocent. Well, when Proctor was up on the stand, Proctor's story is that Yannetti and Lucky and this PI showed up in the parking lot of this school where they had decided to meet. Well, that's the school where Courtney Proctor works. So he tells a story that while they're meeting in the parking lot, another teacher sees them, comes and says something to them, asks them to leave the parking lot. They shouldn't be there, blah, 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 blah. Courtney Proctor apparently found out they were out there. She calls her brother and says, am I about to be served? Like, what's going on? Proctor's thinking, why are they out there? Are they trying to intimidate my sister? So that's his excuse as to why he doesn't like Yannetti. But here's the thing. Yannetti is saying, I showed up, I met Lucky, the three of us chit-chatted, we got in the car, we left. We came back, we got into our own cars, we left. He recalls nothing about any conversation with any teacher, doesn't recall ever being asked to leave the property. He feels that Proctor got up on the stand and made up a story that never ever happened. So this is going to get interesting when the defense gets up there, and they probably bring Proctor back up. One of the bigger witnesses this week was a woman named Jessica Hyde. Now, she is a cell phone Google search expert. Now, what's interesting is that she is testifying that she can't be certain that there was a 227 Google search about how long it takes to die in the snow made by Jen McCabe. That's the whole reason she's been brought forward, is that she can testify that she does not believe this Google search took place. Now, what's interesting, and I've said this before when witnesses are on the stand, it feels like they're fed this one sentence that they're supposed to say over and over and over again. And she was no exception. They're not lying. It's just kind of an argument about semantics. So she's treading very lightly. I don't doubt that she's very smart. I don't doubt that she found certain things and didn't find certain things. But I also know that what they asked her to look at, she was given a very small scope. So when you're only given these 3 things to look at, you might not be able to find what you're looking for. But Jackson asks her, can you rule it out? Because her testimony has been, I found no evidence that this Google search took place. So he's asking questions like, can you rule it out? Can you rule it out? And he kind of keeps going at her. And what's interesting is he gets her to say some really direct statements. And I wrote them down in quotes because I think this is going to come back to bite her. She was being a little bit vague, saying, I found no evidence of, or I can't validate, or I don't think it took place. Like, she's still dancing on that line of plausible denial. But then Jackson keeps asking these questions, and pretty soon these turn into very certain statements like, quote, timestamp does not tell me anything about the time of the search. I thought that's exactly what timestamps did, but I'm not as smart as any of these experts. Quote, there is no indication of a Google search on or before 2:27 a.m. until another witness gets up there and tells us there is. He asked her again, can you rule it out? And she says, finally, unequivocal statement, quote, there is no evidence that a search took place at that time. I think Jackson was getting her to say it that directly so that he could put somebody else up there, or 3 or 4 people up there that say, oh yeah, there is evidence that it is. In fact, I believe I read somewhere that there was some sort of FBI forensics lab that already proved that that Google search took place. And it just seems strange that I believe the 2:27 search and the 6 a.m. search were spelled differently. So it feels to me like there are 2 different searches. That's not the same search. Then they got up on the stand, this guy named Trooper Paul, and he's the reenactment guy. And it sounds like he had Karen Read's car, and he was doing some things in a parking lot to try and reenact that night. And that's where I think they got the traveled 62 feet at 24 miles per hour, hit him, and he flew this far. Now, what's interesting is I think this reenactment, it took place at the Canton PD. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't go out to the actual road, or you wouldn't do something that made it seem more plausible to the actual situation. But they did it in the parking lot of the Canton PD, which we already know the vehicle never should have been there in the first place. But anyway, he's out there driving around the Canton PD parking lot, and he says, oh, it was same weather conditions, it was similar environment, everything. He was doing this on February 1st. So they're really just trying hard to build the case against Karen. But keep in mind, the bulk of the taillight evidence wasn't found until Proctor made repeat visits to the site starting February 3rd, going all the way up for the next 2 weeks until the 18th. And then the retired Chief Berkowitz across the street, remember, he found that big piece later. It just seems weird to me that after they're in a parking lot testing the theory of how she hit him, suddenly there's that much more taillight evidence back at the scene. Almost as if they're saying, well, in order for this to happen, the taillight would have been shattered. And someone's like, ta-da! And finally this week, we got someone from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey. She spoke to reporters saying that his text messages were terrible, that she was disgusted by the language, it was terribly unprofessional. So I suspect that Michael Proctor's days as a Commonwealth of Massachusetts state police officer are numbered.